Hey, thanks for pressing play on complexities.podcast. You're the bee's knees. This podcast is meant to be a catalyst for healing. We hope that our words will be thought-provoking, not ego-provoking. Although I will poke fun at your ego. We'll also be discussing trauma and abuse of all kinds, neglect and mental health concerns and conditions, sex, drugs, rock and roll, alcohol, suicide, and probably religions and politics. It's likely that we'll cover most topics that have been labeled as triggering.
We are not doctors of anything. We can't treat or diagnose you, and we are definitely not a substitute for treatment of any kind.
Welcome to Complexities Podcast. I'm Miss Complexities, and we're here with Patty Face, my partner in all things.
Hello, it's me, the partner in all things.
Today we're going to wrap up the 4 F's with the very last one, Fawn. And we're going to hopefully give you some practical advice on how, why I actually brought all of this shit up, which is so that you can learn more about yourself and use these things that you've learned with your relationship with yourself and your relationships with other people.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's important.
So this will be episode 3 in our 4-part series, because there's only going to be 3 parts.
Right. This is the final countdown.
We scrunched 2 parts into one episode.
Which they would know if they had listened.
True. Or at least looked at the feed.
Yeah.
So it was going to be 4 parts, but now it's only 3. Because
maybe you're skipping to this because you already know that you're Fawn.
We were efficient. What? I haven't read anything about Fawn.
Right, well.
So I don't know anything.
So we're going to read to you about Fawn.
I'm going to read to us.
I'm probably going to give you my unqualified, biased advice on that.
That's how we roll. That's what we do. It's our jam.
Uh-huh. All right, so we're going to read from our hymnals of Pete Walker.
Or Pete Walker hymnals.
The complexity.
How many fucking
complex
bookmarks do you
PTSD
have in
from
this
thriving to surviving.
I need to get you some of those stickies.
Pete Walker.
Pete Walker.
Turning
I'm
the
going to rock the page
number.
number. This time I will get it the first try. This is page 122.
Under the heading of
The Fawn Type and the Codependent Defense.
All right.
You like my sibilants?
People probably don't.
Yeah, I'm in their earbuds right now, and they're going, this motherfucker and his sibilants. You can't say sibilants without creating some sibilants.
Maybe you should stop saying it.
Okay. I'm going to stop saying sibilants. All right. The Fawn Type and the Codependent Defense. Here we go. Getting right into this shit because we got no time to waste.
It's the final countdown.
It's the final countdown. Fawn types seek safety by merging with the wishes, needs, and demands of others. So from that first sentence, I'm going to try to postulate, to use your word. These are people that just kind of roll over and accept what happens.
I
Not really accept it, but just...
I mean, I think I kind of got to this point when I was living with Phil, and it was just kind of like, I know that I'm not going to change him or, the shit that he puts me through, so I might as well just, assimilate into that life. I started just giving him what he wanted, saying what he wanted to hear.
Oh, so that he would just leave it alone.
Yeah, instead of, at first we would have, arguments or fights, and he would gaslight me to the point where I didn't know what was happening. And I finally got to the point where I was like, fuck it, I don't want to do this shit anymore. And I just was telling him what he wanted to hear, doing what he wanted me to do.
Right.
Avoiding him or not trying to start anything, walking on eggshells.
Okay.
Just whatever the fuck the narcissist wants, either wholeheartedly giving that to them without acknowledging the fact that you're doing it.
Right.
Or I guess I kind of acknowledged that I was doing it just so that I didn't have to deal with the aftermath of pissing him off.
Sure.
So,
okay. Yeah. Okay.
At least that's what I did.
Right. All right. So I'm going to read that first sentence again, and I'll just keep going. Fawn types seek safety by merging with the wishes, needs, and demands of others. They act as if they believe that the price of admission to any relationship is the forfeiture of all their needs, rights, preferences, and boundaries. Oh, so this is where the boundary stuff comes in, the healthy boundaries that you talk about. The disenfranchisement, that's a hell of a word. It looks bigger when you read it, of the fawn type begins in childhood. She learns early that a modicum of safety and attachment can be gained by becoming the helpful and compliant servant of her exploitive parents. A fawn type / codependent is usually the child of at least one narcissistic parent. The narcissist reverses the parent-child relationship. The narcissist reverses the parent-child relationship?
So, I mean, I can only speak to mine and Phil's relationship, and I think oftentimes...
Hold on, let me finish. The child is parentified and takes care of the needs of the parent, who acts like a needy and sometimes tantruming child. Oh, go ahead. I think, yeah. So,
and I've heard this story from someone else too, that like, their dad is a narcissist, and, clearly he's not getting a lot of dates. Nobody really wants to hang out with this guy. So you being the daughter, you end up taking on that motherly and wifely role of, even if it is just emotional and psychological, I'm sure other relationships can end up taking on more traumatizing things. But for me, it just became, there were times where I definitely felt like I was being Phil's wife, like, having to make him feel better about things, or go places with him because he didn't have anyone else to go. And it wasn't because he wanted me to do those things. It was because he needed someone to do it, and I was an easy person to force to do it. Yeah, like it wasn't like I was his loving child, like when our daughter sees that you're having a rough day, she wants to comfort you because she's caring. It's not like that. It's more like, I don't know, I guess like Phil would try to force me into that role of like taking care of him. And I remember oftentimes being like, this should be your fucking, like, this is what your wife is for. This is like, do you need a mom at like 50? Like, what the fuck?
Right.
Like, this is
Did
not
you ever
my
find
job.
yourself making a decision when he was like losing his mind over something? Did you ever find yourself just, okay, am I either going to roll with it, or am I going to try to stop this behavior?
Oh, yeah.
Because that's what a parent does. You're either going to roll with it and let your kid freak out.
Yeah, that's probably why I'm so good at doing it with
intervene.
our kids, where I can look at a situation and be like, I'm going to let them win this fight, or I'm not going to start this fight with them. Because
So that's a very parenting thing for you to do at such a young age.
Right. I think, so my number one thing that I remember about my dad that was it was just like this, I mean, obviously it was psychological abuse, but it was also just this thing that I hated about him. He would ask me, about my day or how something went, and I would genuinely try to explain it to him, and then he would pick apart all of the things that I did wrong or how I could do it better.
Right.
And just basically like derail me in every way possible, because that made him feel better. And eventually, after like a couple of years of just being told that everything I did was wrong and I could always do something better, I just stopped telling him, or I would make things up. I just stopped.
Well, yeah,
like,
why
I
would you?
learned what he would do, and then like I do with the kids, like I learned how they react to certain things, and then I decide like, what do they want to hear at this point in time? What's going to get, basically manipulation, what's going to get me what I want?
Well, you try to pull that with me all the time.
But hopefully in a less abusive way.
I don't know. But like, you said to me many times, well, I'm just going to stop telling you things. Yeah. And it's just like, well, no, that's not what I want.
Well, that's because you're triggering me and making me feel like
I understand.
I used to feel.
Yeah, I understand that now.
I think for people who have been a fawn their whole life, so I didn't live with Phil until I was 11. So that means that I was experiencing different types of trauma until I lived with Phil. So I didn't experience the narcissistic parent until I moved in with him. So before that, I had other types of F's and issues.
Right.
And mostly just I was abandoned. Like, nobody was there. I was neglected. I was spent a lot of time alone in rooms by myself.
Yeah.
But I think if you're constantly with the narcissist from like day one or early childhood, then you would probably have that fawn response a lot sooner. And you realize, especially in a young child who, before 5 or 6, their main goal is survival, and they're trying to figure out what is going to keep them the safest. And if that means just taking the abuse of their parent and doing whatever their parent wants and being like completely submissive to their parent. Like I see kids do it all the time.
Yeah.
You're at the store and some parent is just like berating their child and the kid just gives up, and you can just see in their face that they're like being beaten with words, being beaten into submission with words, and their identity's gone, their passion is gone. Everything's just, they're just giving up because that's the only way that their parents will stop abusing them.
Instead of
fighting back or turning it in on themselves, they become submissive to that abuse and to that person. What else does he say? Let's just
keep
before
going.
I start telling you how it is.
Yeah. All right. When this occurs, so he's talking about when the parent-child thing switches, the child may be turned into the parent's confidant, substitute spouse, coach, or housekeeper. Mm-hmm. Which you could have easily done because his house is a fucking wreck. And you're kind of a neat freak.
Well, I think, like, I've talked to people who are like, my abusive father, he didn't have a wife or he couldn't keep a partner around. So I ended up being the one that would cook and clean and take care of them. And I think that is not uncommon for people who grow up with a narcissist to become the parent so quickly or the partner so quickly. Because that narcissist doesn't see their child as a child or an extension of themselves. Narcissists see people as tools to help them get what they want. And if what they want is a comforting spouse or parent, then they're going to manipulate the child into being that.
Right.
Not because they're bad fucking people, but because they have shit that's unresolved.
Right. So, or she may be pressed into service to mother the younger siblings, which you didn't have. In worst case scenarios, she may be exploited sexually. Mm-hmm. I'm starting to see how this all comes together as far as the trauma,
Yeah.
Some codependent children adapt by becoming entertaining. Oh, yeah, that's good. I mean, you know what I mean? Accordingly, the child learns to be the court jester and is unofficially put in charge of keeping his parent happy. Fuck. I would imagine a lot of stand-up comics come from this kind of, right?
Maybe.
I don't know. I just listen to a lot of podcasts, and most of them are stand-ups, and they all have trauma and shit that they're trying to deal with. Pressing a child into codependent service usually involves scaring and shaming him out of developing a sense of self, which is huge.
Exactly
I mean,
what
yeah,
Phil did.
yeah.
Everything I did was wrong, and he had to show me how to do it better. And shaming everything I did.
Living with a narcissist, you're going to lose your sense of self.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. If there's anything I'm seeing a trend with any of these behaviors, you're losing a sense of self. You don't know who you are. You never got a chance to know who you were.
Right. And I think
because it was all about survival at that point.
What's so different, I actually got asked recently what the difference was between PTSD and complex PTSD. And I go into this all the time that there are a lot of differences, but one of the main differences is
a sense of self.
Well, I was going to say that people with complex PTSD are often born into a household with a narcissistic parent or a severely narcissistic older sibling, or there's always a fucking narcissist at the beginning of complex PTSD. Like, we can always trace it back to somebody else who grew up with a narcissistic parent. And that is the cycle that I see so prevalent in trauma and complex PTSD, is that you can trace it back. Like, there was Phil. There was all of the other people in my family who had debatable moral values, you know? Like, I don't know if anybody else in my family is necessarily a narcissist, but...
I don't know. You never really...
but they have their own shit. So you can trace it all back to somebody, the generation before you or the 2 generations before you, your grandparents were, you know, they were traumatized and abused as children.
What's interesting, though,
then
is...
their parents. And it's this cycle. We're all born to narcissistic, traumatized people, and it just keeps playing out, and it keeps playing out. And it's been playing out for so long that Pete Walker has made a fucking book about how all of our brains develop into the 4 Fs. Like,
yeah.
It's literally been happening so long that there are so many people that we can categorize these things, and we can predict how a child is going to grow up depending on what kind of abuser they have. Like, that is the cycle that's been playing out for so long.
No, what's interesting to me is, so you had said a minute ago that you had a different style. You had a different F until you were 11 and you moved in with your dad.
Honestly, I think I've been through fucking all of them.
You probably have. I mean, I did a poll, kind of a poll. I put it out there on Reddit, on the CPTSD subreddit the other day. I don't know, last week sometime, I think. Got a few responses, and I asked the question, you know, we're going through the 4 Fs, and I was curious to see if people really, really identified with one F mostly, or if they kind of saw themselves bouncing around, or if they were moving through them through different parts of their lives. And it seems like most people, from the handful of responses I got, most people kind of find one of them to be home, and then they may use others in different one-off scenarios here and there, but they're mostly 1 F.
Well,
and there was
that
one
would make
person
sense.
that had said that they had kind of moved through them, you know, through their lifetime, or
Like
they
I
would,
have.
but it seems to be that you find one that works and you stick with it. And I just imagine, I chalk it up to...
because
it depends on the situation,
Right.
the living situation, and
Right.
you
were
you
born
conform to
into,
that.
You know, a parent or 2 parents that are narcissists, and you know, something like you live with these people for 18 years or however long it takes you to get away from them, and it never changes, then you're probably only going to fit into one category or a hybrid category of those Fs depending on the abuser.
Yeah.
But for me, I lived with my mom, and then I lived with my grandparents, and then I lived with my dad, and then I lived on my own.
Well,
So it's like...
here's where I was going. The thing that I really wanted to kind of poke at was, so until you were 11, you spent most of your time in the care of your mom's family.
Right.
So the narcissist comes in when you're 11, and that's your dad. I mean, how much time did you really spend with your dad's family, though? Because they weren't even in the same city. So,
I mean, I only saw them.
do you know
on,
what I mean? Like, you didn't get a
every
chance
other
to
holiday
see
and shit.
You didn't get to see where his shit came from.
Oh yeah, I know exactly where his shit came from.
Oh, you
can
well,
meet
I
his
mean,
parents and,
I mean, you
and
said
know
you
how fucking crazy
I think
they
you
are.
knew his mom more than you knew his dad, right?
No, I mean, I spent an equal amount of time with both of his parents, and you know, my dad's mom. My dad's dad was definitely a narcissist, and she had like 3 or 4 kids. She had 4 kids, I think, with him, and then my dad is the 3rd oldest, or the 3rd youngest. He's the 3rd kid out of 4.
Wait.
Yeah. So right after she had her 4th kid, she fucking bailed. She was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, you're killing me. And so she got out of the relationship. And so that like early abandonment really fucked up my dad. But then also, his dad was a military man. He was an alcoholic, and he was a narcissist. I'm pretty sure he was physically abusive and psychologically abusive. So it's easy to see where, like, how fucked up, how it all correlates. Like,
And your
my dad didn't know anything different.
Right, and your dad still has a relationship with both of them, as far as we know.
My dad's dad passed away a few years ago.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
Oh, I think I remember that.
But yeah, he did still have a relationship.
I mean, I remember you guys
he, like,
going and
hated
seeing
them. Like,
him and-
admittedly, he would be like, oh, I fucking, they're crazy. You know, my mom's fucking nuts. But he's still out there, you know, like, I don't know if he feels responsible or if he's trying to fill that void, you know, from her leaving and wanted,
Maybe
like,
he's
whatever.
stuck in that fucking parenting role that switched.
Yeah, I don't know.
Who knows? But the only reason why I brought that up is because I wanted to see the difference between, because as far you said you weren't sure if you had any narcissists on your mom's side, which is kind of weird because
Well, it's so hard to tell because
hard to tell,
they
'cause
fucking
you
lie
didn't-
about everything.
Right.
I don't know. Like, I genuinely don't know these people. I don't know anything fucking about them because it's all bullshit.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, as horrible as your dad is, I feel like I know him better than I know your mom's family.
Yeah.
And we spent more time. I mean, well, I wouldn't say that.
Phil's easy to understand.
He is.
Because he's just a classic narcissist that came from a classic narcissist background with abandonment issues and insanity. Like, that's very easy. My mom's parents are much harder to understand because there's all of these, like, you know, religious factors and
well, they pretend a lot.
cultural
They lie.
factors and racism and hatred and self-hate and, you know, just all of it. Like, it's, you know, my psychology mind loves trying to understand it, but it's, you know, it's a mess. But I think when you're going through the 4 Fs, and what can be helpful for you, at least for me, has been so healing, is to look back at these people who have hurt me so much and to see, you know, well, where do they fit? What happened to them? What made them the way that they are?
Right. That's kind of why I was
and
asking.
how did it make me this way? And how do I start untangling the mess of shit?
So, you became more of a Fawn, you would say, when you moved in with your dad? Or was it a hybrid between...
Like, I honestly, we're still going through these, and I don't know, like, which one I am. I think I'm really... And this is what sucks.
Well,
like, if you don't have an identity and you're an INFJ, you so easily take on anything. Like, I could literally take on any personality, any identity, and find a way to make it my own.
You should have worked for the CIA.
Oh, I'd make a great spy.
If it weren't for your back.
That's what I always wanted to do because I was raised in James Bond movies. Anyway, yeah, I don't know. I think that I resonate with all the 4 Fs at different points in my life.
Yeah. Okay, well,
So, yeah.
I mean, I could totally see you being a Fawn with your dad. Totally. Yeah. I could totally see that.
And I mean, I remember getting to that point where I think I was probably like...
Especially before you bailed.
I think I was probably like 15. And I was like, you know what?
Fuck this shit. I'm done.
I only have like 3 more years till I'm 18. I can just put my head down and fucking get through this and never have to deal with him again.
Yeah.
And I only made it 2 years because he got me a car, and then as soon as I got a car, I got a job, and I got the fucking hell out of there. But yeah, I think at some point I consciously was like, I'm just gonna start giving him what he wants. And
just fucking survive.
Survive.
Yep.
Because that, and I think for young children, they unconsciously make that decision in their mind.
I'm sure you did.
Because it's survival. I'm talking about people who are born to a narcissist.
Yeah.
You know, like if I had spent my whole childhood with him full time,
right.
I probably would have become that much earlier.
Right, sure. I imagine that would probably be my response. I mean, as a normal person, I'm using patty face.
Patty face.
I'm a patty face. If you listen to episode 1, you know what patty face is. I use that. I use Fawn, you know, in all kinds of different scenarios. Where it's just like, okay.
Yeah, but
I thought that was the perfect.
Well, you might be a little less than healthy.
I might be a little, but now, I think that was the perfect way you said it. Was you just at some point in your life you were just like, okay, I only got a couple more years. We're gonna put my head down and get the fuck through this. Yeah. I would imagine a lot of kids feel that, whether they're realizing it or not. They're just going, okay, I got to figure out a way to make it through today without getting yelled at or being responsible for some shit, or just I just need to get through today. Right. And I'm going to find the path of least resistance, really, is what you're talking about, right? Like, kind of just, if you can avoid seeing them.
Yeah.
If you can avoid talking to them.
Or you start learning, you know, what their triggers are, and you stop triggering them. You know, like, I am a very strong-willed person. I'm very stubborn. And me and my dad would have some...
That's crazy that you would say that, huh?
Some knockdown, drag-out arguments. Like, I would be fucking... yelling and screaming at him, and he would be doing the same at me. And I started realizing that was getting me nowhere. So I stopped, and I just stopped because it wasn't working. It was only making it worse. So
yeah. All right, I'm gonna keep going on this thing. We're almost to the recovering part. So pressing a child into codependent service usually involves scarring and shaming him out of developing a sense of self Of all the 4F types, fawn types are the most developmentally arrested in their healthy sense of self. Makes 100% sense to me.
So I guess what he's saying is their identities is the most squished out, and their identity's been the most suffocated. And like I see this when I go to fucking stores and I go out in the world. This is why I don't go out in the world, because I literally see parents suffocating not just their children, like, emotionally, but, like, everything. Like, these kids have no passion. They have no identity. They're just fucking, their eyes are dead.
Yeah.
And it is so sad to see, like, a 5 or 6 year old looking at their parents that way. Like, it's just awful.
Yeah. There was a girl I showed you.
So stop fucking doing it to your kids.
Don't peek the mic. I understand you're upset.
Oh.
So we had a lady, a woman, or a listener reach out to us on Facebook. She sent us a message, and she had said that she had just realized that she really didn't have a whole lot of sense of self, and she was just now starting to work on that. And now that I've read this, I'm going, holy shit. I'm willing to put money on the fact that maybe, I don't know her story. She didn't go into details or at all, but I'm willing to put money on the fact that she's probably got a good fawn in her. She probably spent a lot of time.
Well, I think everybody with complex PTSD
giving up herself
has identity
to survive.
Issues. But yeah, I think if you're a fawn, and if it started much earlier in childhood, then, you know, if my narcissistic abuse started when I was, you know, much younger, then I probably would have never been strong-willed and stubborn.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, you spent a good amount of time trying to figure out who the fuck you are.
Right.
I mean, it's gotten pretty fucking deep.
It has.
To the core of what...
I had no idea who I was.
Yeah.
But that was because I was abandoned. I was alone. I never had anyone tell me to go find myself, or even that I was a self. You know, like, whenever you leave, it's like the failure to thrive ship. Like, when you leave a kid alone with themselves all the time, nothing's going to happen. They become resilient and stubborn, but that's about it.
There's no guidance.
And angry. They become angry.
Would you consider yourself an angry person?
Oh, I have a lot of anger. I just didn't know about it until, like 3 years ago.
Yo, yeah,
it was just really buried.
That was a very angry year or so. Everything. Woo! All right, so here we go. We're moving on. I'm going to take this fucking thing out here.
All right, so we finished up the fawn, right?
That was the description of the fawn type and the codependent defense. We have to read the recovering part.
Right, okay, so you read the recovering from fawn, because that's what people really want to hear.
This is your favorite part. This is the
light at the end of the tunnel.
Got it in. Every single episode, here it is. Light at the end of the tunnel. We're going to get shirts made with all of our catchphrases. Just you watch.
It's not enough shirts.
We need more shirts. All right, recovering from a polarized fawn response. Fawn types typically respond to psychoeducation. It's a word I've never read before.
I don't even know what that means.
Psychoeducation.
Is that like whenever you really get into psychology?
I think it's just learning about all this stuff, because, listen.
That's what I like to do.
Fawn types typically respond to psychoeducation about the 4Fs with great relief. This eventually helps them to recognize the repetition compulsion that draws them to narcissistic types who exploit them. Is he saying that
I don't know.
they start to get...
I just needed to look up the definition because I don't like not knowing answers to things.
Psychoeducation.
Psychoeducation refers to the process of providing education and information to those seeking or receiving mental health services, such as diagnosed with mental health conditions or their family matters. So it's just...
learning about the stuff.
Just learning about your shit, which I love doing. So, hello, Fawn.
Yeah. They respond with great relief to psychoeducation. This eventually helps them to recognize the repetition compulsion that draws them to narcissistic types who exploit them. So they're drawn to narcissists.
Right.
They learn to be drawn to a narcissist.
Right. It feels safe. It feels comfortable.
Because that's what they've been doing their whole lives.
Right. It's why I've never really gone out.
Am I a narcissist? Oh my God.
No, I've never really gone out and dated people that reminded me of my dad. But I remember.
You ever dated a narcissist?
I've been attracted to narcissists, but I've quickly realized that they drive me nuts.
Interesting.
So I maybe have gone like on a couple of dates with them or like tried it out.
Yeah.
No, that's not true. I had a thing with he was a narcissist.
The guy that took you down and framed you?
No, I don't know. That guy was probably a narcissist too, but he was a different kind of. I'm talking about people who are like Phil, where they only think about themselves and they are psychologically abusive in a relationship. But see, what I liked about this particular partner was he was kind of a challenge, and I like to annoy the shit out of him. So like he would start triggering me and making me think of him as Phil, and then I would just start fucking annoying the shit out of him. And then we'd watch a documentary about history, and it was fine.
Because you knew how to annoy him.
Yeah.
Because you had been there before.
Right. And it was
gave you satisfaction.
Fun. It did give me satisfaction. Maybe it was like a weird way of getting back at Phil that I wanted to like annoy this guy.
Yeah, because there was no consequence, right? I mean, this guy wasn't related to you. You could do whatever the fuck you wanted to him and whatever.
But yeah, so a lot of people who are raised by a narcissistic parent, especially like the daughter-son or the daughter-father aspect. Like if the daughter, is raised by a narcissistic father, they often seek out people who are very narcissistic. And
so continues the cycle.
Right.
If they fall into that trap.
This is cliche shit that they make movies about.
Wow. So the codependent needs to understand how she gives herself away by over-listening to others.
It means that you're not listening to your own needs. You're not meeting your needs. You're giving.
Recovery involves shrinking her characteristic listening defense, as well as practicing. Well, I think he's talking about setting a boundary. Right, recovery involves shrinking her characteristic listening defense, as well as practicing and broadening her verbal and emotional self-expression.
Right.
Which is, cultivating the sense of self. So you got to set the boundary.
Boundaries too,
and you got to set the sense.
I used to never be able to stand up for myself. Like if somebody said,
"Oh yeah,
you're gonna work this shift," and I would be like, "I don't really want to, but okay." And now I'm just like, "Nah, like I don't want to do that. Sorry, I'm out."
Well, you had a whole. You're very passive.
Right.
This is the person, ladies and gentlemen, who will quit a job and not go back to get their last paycheck.
This happened on multiple occasions.
I'm like, go get your fucking paycheck. She's like, no, I'm not going back there.
I would have major panic attacks about the possibility of a minuscule confrontation when I would pick up money that was owed to me. It happened like
I'm like, yo, that's like $60.
Times.
Go get that shit.
It happened a lot.
It did. Yeah. Since we've been together, I think it's happened at least.
But I give no fucks now.
Times.
I've gotten past that.
Yeah, you have. And you can't, she can't call any kind of automated thing. You need to call the insurance company. You need to call something. She's not doing that. I got to handle it. She will get into an argument over something really simple, and I will have to call and fix it.
Yes, so I have confrontation
and I'm happy
issues.
To do it.
Yes, we're aware.
But you're awesome. You're getting better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Set those boundaries.
Set the boundaries. And you have to start giving to yourself, too, and seeing that, like, so much of the things that I've found in complex PTSD boil down to this idea that it's not an idea. I mean, it's a genuine belief about yourself because it was burned into your mind that you're not worthy.
Yep.
So you have to, even if you don't believe that you're worthy at first, you have to start treating yourself like you would treat anyone else. Maybe you don't think that your neighbor is a nice person, but you're still gonna smile and wave and not burn their fucking house down, right?
Yeah. You sent me, so one night you were working, usually when you close, you send me videos, stacks on videos of videos.
Oh, YouTube videos, not videos of myself.
No, not videos of yourself. YouTube videos. She sends me YouTube videos all night when she works.
That's what I do. I listen to videos all night.
Yeah, she listens to videos, and she sent me one, and I'm going to say something that has become a little bit of a mantra for myself that I think a lot of people could benefit from. And it is, what would someone who loves themselves do?
Yeah.
That's huge.
It is important. And
It's really important.
Sure
I mean,
that,
for me, it puts it into a perspective that kind of makes you have that self-care mentality.
right.
You know, like, okay, if you're looking at yourself and you look at what you're doing or what you're saying or what you're going through at that moment or deciding to do, you just ask that question, what would someone who loves themselves do? Then all of a sudden you have a different perspective and you can go, okay, if I loved myself, if I was split into two and I'm looking across the room at myself and I loved that person over there who is myself, what would I do for that person?
I think that became so important in my life when I realized
It's a mind shift.
it's a perspective change, and that perspective shift came for me when I realized like people would tell me, like, I'm not trying to like talk myself up, because it gets down to me hating myself at the end. So people have told me, you are the nicest person I've ever met, or you are one of the kindest people I know, or, you know, you are selfless. You know, these ideas that that's how people see me.
Yeah.
Because I would literally give anyone anything.
Yeah.
Like, you need a kidney? Take mine now.
Yeah.
Like, whatever the fuck you need, I will give it to you.
Right. Detrimental to yourself, it got so far.
Not only detrimental to myself, but I started realizing that I was so kind to everyone else. And it wasn't that I was avoiding myself or that my self-care was lacking. It was even, I was mean and hateful and hurting myself. You know, I have an eating disorder. I starve myself.
Yeah, you're punishing yourself somehow.
I have a lot of tattoos, and originally that was some sort of weird, twisted mind fuck of me hurting myself. People who are into self-harm, like, it's you hurting yourself because you haven't healed, you know, whatever the fuck it is that makes one hurt themselves. So when I realized that, and it's because my dad used to tell me I was selfish and manipulative and I only thought about myself. So I went the opposite way. I started caring about everyone and giving to everyone, and I would do anything for anyone.
So where does the self-harm come in, though? I don't understand that.
Well, it turned
if you're out
into,
to prove him wrong, right? I mean, it's what you're saying.
But it was coupled with how much I hated myself and how worthless I believed that I was.
So it sounds like a completely other episode that we could do.
Anyway,
we're talking about
I think
Fawn
when
here.
you're talking about Fawn and you're talking about healing from Fawn, not only do you need to set good boundaries and start caring for yourself and believing that you're worthy, but you have to stop hurting yourself too.
Yeah.
Because if you see how you're giving all of your ness to everyone else, if you're giving everyone else you, but you're not giving it to yourself, like that's pretty common. Self-care is a huge thing right now. But it can go deeper. You can physically, emotionally, whatever, be hurting yourself still. Negative self-talk, self-harm. It could be emotional. It could be mental. It could be physical ways that you are actually hurting yourself.
Right.
Instead of, like, I think when I realized that it was deeper than the fact that I wasn't just giving myself self-care. I wasn't just neglecting myself. I was physically and emotionally harming myself.
Right. Just so everybody has a point of reference, that's a difference between you and I. I haven't gone so far as to start hurting myself. I just don't practice self-care.
Right.
And I think that's a pretty normal thing.
Yeah, in
I
this
think.
day and age, especially with children and
There's
with
so much
a lot
going on.
it's
Yeah.
really easy just to not have a self-care routine or forget your self-care routine. But I think for those people who, especially for Fawn types, I think it can be really easy to turn that against yourself, turn yourself against yourself.
So you think that that's a kind of a slippery slope? Not practicing self-care might eventually lead to self-harm? Or is it just kind of, it depends on your...
I never practiced self-care because nobody ever told me that I needed to care about myself or that I needed to take care of myself.
Huh.
So I've never had a self-care routine.
Sure.
But I think neglecting your children and telling them that they don't need to love and care about themselves and showing them how to take care of themselves, coupled with then telling them that they're worthless and manipulative and
Right.
assholes
Right.
and all of the stuff
Right.
that Phil used to tell
Right.
me, it just snowballed into self-harm and
Right.
self-hate.
I think it's a difficult thing. I'm going to admit it's a difficult thing to try to show somebody how to do self-care, especially if self-care is so centered around who you are.
Well, I think if you're
Right?
if you're a healthy parent trying to teach your child how to be healthy, it just comes natural. Like, we brush our teeth because it keeps our teeth healthy, and
Yeah.
we love our teeth and we're grateful of our teeth,
Right.
so we take care of them. That
Right.
is fucking self-care. And it's not hard to teach a child. But if you're not willing to teach your child anything other than that they're ruining your life and that they're annoying to you because you're so unhealed, then they're not going to develop a healthy sense of self or self-care.
Okay. All right. Self-care. It's important. Do that shit.
Stop self-hating or self-hurting.
Find every little way to do self-care and put yourself in that mindset of, because I didn't think of it. I take that shit for granted. Brushing your teeth. That's fucking self-care. Self-care.
It really is for me, at least.
I mean, it can be if you
But I think what I tried to do was
ask the question, what would someone who loves themselves do?
Yeah.
They'd brush their
But
teeth because they
before I
take care of
could get
themselves.
there, and before I could start doing all of these wonderful self-care routines and fucking rainbows, like before I could even do that, I had to realize that I was
Hurting yourself.
hurting myself,
Yeah.
and then I had to combat that.
Right.
You know, like I had to stop hurting myself. I had to realize what I was doing to hurt myself
Right.
before I could even think about self-care
Sure. Okay.
or self-love.
So people need to get a grip on the self-harm.
And it's a scary thing to admit that, like,
You are hurting
You're
yourself.
like,
You may not
I
even
had-
realize that you're hurting yourself. Right? You
Right.
didn't really put it in that perspective for yourself, did you?
well, I did later, recently, you know, in the last couple of years. But I would sit down,
But not at
and I wouldn't
first.
want to eat food, and then I would have to have that perspective shift of, okay, this is me starving myself right now.
Right.
This is me hurting myself. This is me telling myself I'm not worthy of
Right.
food
Right.
and nutrients and love. This is me expressing that to myself.
Right. But you had to get there.
Right, you have to realize it, and then you have to confront it.
Right.
And oftentimes, me just sitting in front of a plate of food saying, I want to starve myself because I hate myself and I want to inflict pain on myself wasn't enough to actually make me eat the food. But it was enough to give me the chance to start drinking Boost or, you know, replacing a
At
meal.
least you're recognizing, and that's kind of where I'm pointing to is most people, you didn't even recognize that.
I'm at a place
until
where I
somebody
can have
was
it,
like,
I can have a
"Yo."
neutral action. You know,
Right.
I may not be able to flowers and rainbows and eat the meal and love my fucking self, but I am at a place where I can say, this is me harming myself. I'm not going to harm myself today. I'm going to replace my calories.
Right.
So,
I'm going to slam a boost or two.
yeah,
Right.
redirect.
Sorry.
Yeah, well, I'm the one that said calories. So, but yeah, like you have to have that recognition of like whatever the fuck it is that you do to hurt yourself, whether it be, you know, constant, never-ending negative self-talk,
Well,
or
that's a
you
big
put
one I think a lot of
yourself
people
down
have.
to others,
Right.
or you know, you self-harm in some way, whatever way, you know, starving yourself,
Cutting.
physical, whatever it is,
Sure.
whatever it is that you're doing to hurt yourself.
Yep.
You know, I'm not telling you to stop. I'm telling you to realize that that is you continuing the cycle of abuse on yourself, and you don't have to stop, but you have to take a neutral action. You have the power to say, no, I'm not going to continue this. I'm just going to stop. I'm just going to step back, and, you know, you don't have to change the habit, but you can stop in the moment, and you can say, this is negative self-talk. And it'll stop.
So wouldn't taking that neutral action be considered a great step towards self-care?
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds like a self-care action to me.
It is a self-care action, but I think in the moment
You're not going to see it that way.
You're not going to see it. You see it like,
I'm stopping this bad thing.
oh, yeah, but in your mind, it's not a bad thing. In your mind,
Oh, wow.
it's a habit. It's
It feels
comforting.
good.
Starving
Right.
myself soothes me.
Safety.
Yeah. So for me, not starving myself and replacing with Boost is like
God damn, what a mind fuck.
is a weird habit that I just I don't let myself hurt myself anymore, but I'm kind of stuck in that. Well, I'll just drink a Boost and move on with my life.
Right.
I surrendered.
And you've grappled with that. I'm seeing you.
Right. I surrendered to the fact that I don't have a normal relationship with food, so I'm just going to give my body what it needs in this moment and move on.
Right.
Which is,
Calories.
a huge step for me, but it's not the end.
Right.
So, but you have to take a step. If you just...
Be okay with that step.
Right.
I know that was a struggle for you for a little bit, was just being okay with, you know what? I'm drinking a Boost, and that's going to be fine.
Right, and that's
because you used to beat yourself
habit.
up. You used to beat yourself up a lot about, I didn't eat any food today. All I had was Boost, and you would get all angry with yourself. And I'm like, look, at least you're putting something in. I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
It's better than not.
Right. At least you stopped whatever the harm was that you're doing in that moment. Like, you don't have to look at it like, I'm never going to harm myself ever again. No, just in this moment, what are you going to do?
All right. So, Fawn.
Tangent.
It was a good tangent, though. It was quality. No, I got a couple things to read. So he's talking about his experience now.
All right, just read the whole paragraph, and I won't interrupt
We're gonna fucking knock it out. You ready? It's 2 paragraphs. They're kind of short, though. I have seen numerous. Oh my God, I don't know that word. Inveterate. God damn you, Pete. What's that word?
Inveterate.
Yeah, you don't know that word either.
I'll Google it.
Inveterate. Wow. This is two episodes in a row, I think, where I've had to... I just don't know the word. He's seen numerous codependents, I don't know what that word is, inveterate codependents, become motivated to work on their assertiveness when they realize that even the thought of saying no triggers them into an emotional flashback.
Yeah.
They become motivated to work on their assertiveness when they realize that even the thought of saying no triggers them.
It's hard. I used to not be able to say no.
Right. After a great deal of work, one client was shocked by how intensely he dissociated when he contemplated confronting his boss's awful behavior. This shock then morphed into an epiphany of outrage about how dangerous it had been to protest anything in his family. This in turn aided him greatly in overcoming his resistance to role-playing assertiveness in our future work together. With considerable practice, this client learned to overcome the critic voices that immediately short-circuited him from ever asserting himself. In the process, he remembered how he was repeatedly forced to stifle his individuality in childhood. Grieving these losses, there we go again, grieving, I'm telling you, it's powerful, then helped him to work at reclaiming his developmentally addressed self-expression. Recovering from the fawn position will be explored more intensely, extensively in the next chapter. Well, fuck.
Okay, hold on.
Well, people should just buy the book, and we're only going to touch on topics.
Listen, this is how you say the word.
Inveterate.
Inveterate?
Yeah, there's not a D, but it wants you to say a D. Inveterate, having a particular habit, activity, or interest that is long established and unlikely to change. So he's saying somebody who is habitually and lifelong codependent.
Why couldn't he just use a word we all know?
Because he's Pete Walker and he likes big words.
God, I thought you were a normal dude, Pete.
Don't make fun of wordies. I'm a wordie.
You're just like a foodie.
Yeah, but it's somebody who loves words. Like the way
it.
they sound in your ear and feel in your mouth.
Inveterate.
I don't know.
So, that's the 4 Fs.
Yeah, and so we have like a quick wrap up of all 4 of the Fs. Because what I really wanted to do was give, obviously there's so much power that comes with knowing where you sit on this 4F chart. But really what matters is what you do with that information and how you use it to heal yourself. So there's a small recap of all 4 of the Fs and I think advice on how to implement these into your life.
Because, okay, this is page 278 in your hymnals. We're going to hell. That's fine. At least we'll be there together.
Already here. I've already been there.
Burn.
Yeah.
Get it?
On.
Burn.
Yeah,
all right, here we go.
People are just leaving the show.
All right, we just lost a couple 100,000 listeners. That's fine. We could take the hit.
There's going to be like an evangelical preaching about us. That would be amazing.
Hopefully nobody in San Jose is pissed off because apparently right now that's like our number one spot, San Jose. Did you know that?
California?
Yeah, I just looked at the metrics. We like most of our listeners right now are in San Jose.
Clearly they're not like super religious people if they're listening to our show.
And then after that is Oregon. I think it's Portland.
Well, yeah, we stay weird.
Stay weird because we're
fucking weird people.
That's right. All right,
We're complex.
We are complex. Got it. Dialogicality and the 4 F's. Page 278 of your
Can you give us a quick definition of dialogue?
Nope. Moving on. There's a word I want you to define for me later after I get through this, okay? Remind me. Because of childhood abandonment and repetition compulsion in later relationships, many 4F types are, quote, dying to be heard. Different types, however, vary considerably in their dialogical needs over the course of therapy. The fawn/codependent type, who survived in childhood by becoming a parent's sounding board or shoulder to cry on, may use her listening defense to encourage the therapist to do much of the talking. Oh. With her eliciting defense, she may even invoke the careless therapist into narcissistically monologuing himself. Sneaky as fuck. You know, I used to do that kind of same thing when I was in drum lessons. I would get them on topic so I wouldn't have to
do drums.
Yeah, I wouldn't like.
You shouldn't admit that on a podcast when you're trying to start teaching drum lessons again. This is bad for business.
Quick tip for music majors: if you didn't practice and you're headed to your lesson for the week, just get them talking. It'll burn up all that time, and they won't know you'll never practice.
No, don't listen to him.
All right,
he's a horrible person.
The freeze dissociative type, who learned early to seek safety in the camouflage of silence, right? Often needs a great deal of encouragement to discover and talk about his inner experience. So you just get him talking, basically. Encourage him. Psychoeducation, there's that word again, can help him understand how his healthy narcissistic need to express himself was never nurtured in his family. Let that soak in for a second. Healthy narcissistic need.
Right.
To express
the need
himself.
To love yourself and see worth in yourself.
Right.
That was suffocated with everything else.
And that's the freeze dissociative type. Okay. Furthermore, freeze types can easily get lost in superficial and barely relevant free associations as they struggle to learn to talk about themselves. This, of course, needs to be welcomed for some time, but eventually we must help him see that his flights of fantasy or endless dream elaborations are primarily manifestations of his dissociative defense.
That's what I do for you.
Yeah, I know. I was just realizing that as I was reading it. I was like, oh, Jesus Christ.
I saw your face go, oh.
You saw my face.
You're like, this is my life.
Oh, fuck. Freeze types need to learn that emotionally disconnected talking is an old childhood habit that was developed to keep them buoyant above their undealt with emotional pain. Because of this, we must repeatedly guide them toward their feelings so that they can learn to express their most important concerns.
You want me to make a copy of that for you?
Yeah. The fight. Jesus. The fight/narcissistic type who often enters therapy habituated to holding court.
What? Like court mandated therapy?
I
Is that what
don't
it's
know.
saying?
Who enters therapy habituated to holding court.
What's the next sentence? Let's get some context.
It's the rest of the sentence. Typically dodges real intimacy with her talking defense.
Yeah.
Enters therapy habituated to holding court. Like they're on trial? Is that what they're saying?
Maybe they're talking. I don't know what the fuck he's talking about.
Well, they dodge it. They dodge the real intimacy with talking defense.
Right.
So that's kind of what we're talking about. Therapy can actually be counterproductive for these types as months or years of uninterrupted monologuing in sessions exacerbate their sense of entitlement. That's why your dad.
I was in therapy for so long.
Well, and that's why that's why nothing will happen with your father because even if he goes to therapy. Anyway, plus we know Pete he thinks he's a lost cause. So. Way to be optimistic, Pete.
I think Phil's a lost cause, so it's okay.
Everybody does. Well, not everybody. Everybody has in you and me.
And that's all that matters.
By providing a steady diet of uninterrupted listening, the therapist strengthens their intimacy-destroying defense over-controlling conversations. Sooner or later, we must insert ourselves into the relationship to work on helping them learn to listen. There you go. Play it back, rewind, read it again. I'm not going to read it over and over again, but if you want to hear it again, buy the book or just hit rewind for 30 seconds and you'll hear it all.
Did you go through all of them?
Yeah, that was it.
What about fight?
That was fight.
Oh, okay. So we got all of them?
She wasn't listening.
I was listening, mostly.
We got all of them.
Right.
So, what do we think? Wrap it up. What do you got?
Well, that's what I wanted to talk to you about. So I bring up the 4 F's because obviously there's healing and there's power in understanding how you became you. At least for me. Personally, the biggest catalyst for my healing has been boiling my life down, stepping back, looking at it from a, what is that word? Like taking my ego and my personal victimhood feeling out of it and just seeing it.
Objective?
Yeah, just seeing it objectively for what it is. Like I will read things like this and I will just take out my pain, my ego, and just see what it really is, which is this beautiful evolution of your mind so that you could survive.
Right.
Because when I do that, that's when I can get past the feeling of pain and really focus on, okay, well, this is what happened to me. This is how
I responded.
This is how my brain functions now, which is so important to know how your brain functions now. Because my brain does not function like yours, Pat.
Right.
So knowing how my brain functions means that I can go outside. I can go into a conversation with you or with other people, or I can do this podcast and I can live normally because I know what my brain, how it's going to react. Like recently I started wearing headphones when I go into stores because I know somebody's going to be abusing their fucking child somewhere and it's going to ruin my whole goddamn day.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So I started wearing headphones and listening to music or listening to talks about something. And then I can tune it out. And it's not going to ruin my fucking day. When you know what's triggering you, when you know why your mind has changed into what it is now, you can start counteracting that. You can start making the triggers less. You can start explaining to your partners and to your friends, this is how your actions affect me. Or, when you do that thing that makes me like yell at you, this is why.
Right.
So that's why I wanted to explain these things, because I think for me, the biggest step towards healing that I've done is just learning everything that I can possibly learn about myself and what my mind has become. Because we live in a society where they want you to be normal, where they want you to be like everybody fucking else. And we are not like that. We have evolved to be something different. And we just need to know how we react to stimuli, how we react to the world around us, so that we can start changing habits, changing patterns, stop the abuse cycle that we play out on ourselves and other people.
Yeah.
So if somebody came to you, Pat, and was like, my partner has complex PTSD, or, my partner has had a lot of trauma and it makes our lives difficult, what would you suggest they do?
I want to answer that question.
Okay. Oh, you wanted me to look up a word for you?
No, you won't be looking it up because it's your word.
It's my word.
You used it, and I've heard you use it many times, and I have a pretty good feeling for what it is. You said it, and people are going to wonder. Maybe they won't. Maybe they got it through context clues. Who knows?
It's a word that I made up. It's not a real word.
It's a word that you use exclusively.
Okay, what is it?
Ness.
Oh, yeah.
It has multiple meanings.
It's like,
but I think it can be pared down to one broad.
So when I was younger, I had a lot of anxiety, talking to people would often make my mind blank. And so I would use, I would say like thing-a-thing or the ness-ness of something. Like the ness-ness of something is like the ness-ness of you is who you are. The ness-ness of the event is all the things that happened at the event.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. It makes sense to me because I understand it. If I were to spell it,
So
it'd be
basically
N-E-S-S.
what happens is it's just ness. It's whenever my mind blanks and I can't.
You can't find the word to attach ness to.
Right. It's the ness of it.
Yeah. Like your fearfulness.
Right.
Right. So you don't have the word to attach ness to, so you say
I actually
ness-ness.
haven't said ness or thing-a-thing in a long time because
I haven't heard you ever say thing-a-thing. Well, no, I've heard you say it sometimes. Rare occasion.
Because I've gotten better with being able to
Find words. All right, so
articulate.
this did happen
in
to
front of
me.
people.
In a way, it just has happened to me. Somebody has come to me and say, "Hey,
I mean, that's why we started this podcast. Like, I think it seems like me bringing up the 4Fs is just like a really long lecture, but I'm actually getting somewhere with this, and I want it to be something that people can use with their relationships with themselves and with other people.
It helps immensely. And it's like I said in the first episode, I think it was the first episode, as much research and therapy that you go through, I think it has to be hopefully as much on the other side too.
Right. Like, you're not going to be able to make a relationship work with a partner or a friendship work with a partner
who just isn't interested.
Who isn't interested or who isn't willing to grow with you. Like,
right.
You have had to learn so much about me and so much about yourself.
Right.
And me learning things about me has brought things up within you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's scary. Like, you don't want to see your flaws or your hang-ups or the pain that you try to hide from yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That's what being in a relationship or a friendship with somebody with complex PTSD does.
I mean, it does.
They can be a mirror for your healing.
I think, well, yeah. And there's so much of this in every relationship. It's definitely amplified in a relationship with somebody with CPTSD.
Or with any kind of mental illness. Or anybody who's not a patty face. If you're in a relationship with somebody who's not a patty face, then there's going to be turmoil.
When we really started going down the hole of, discovering your trauma and trying to work through it, and you were going to treatment for months, you'd be gone. I kind of had to put it in my mind like, okay, she's gone. She's in an eating disorder clinic, mental health facility, fucking committed, right?
Doors lock at night.
Doors lock at night. Like, that's some real shit. Okay. But I had to put it in my head, like, what if she just fucking lost her feet in a horrible car accident? I would have to learn to adapt, and I would learn everything about that disability.
Right.
Right? Because you'd still be my wife. I'd still love you. Like, you're the same person. It's just, now you don't have any feet.
Well, and I think that brings up something important, because how many people are willing to stick around after something like that?
Exactly. And that's what I had to deal with. That was my first thing that I had to deal with when you went away the first time, was like, okay, this is a quote unquote disability, at the time, for lack of a better word. I had to make that association in my head. Okay, this is something real. It's happened. And now I have to decide how I'm going to move forward. Am I going to stick with her, or am I going to bail? And I decided to stick with you because you're amazing and I love you. Right? And with that, I knew that I had to figure out how to support you in that. So just like if you had lost your feet, I would learn everything about, okay, wheelchairs or prosthetics, or, start advocating for fucking...
And I'm going to put this out there, like...
ramps on sidewalks and shit, because that's what my wife needs. Like, that's what you have to immerse yourself in your partner's world.
Right.
You really have to understand.
But I think that really didn't start happening until I went away the second time.
Right.
Like, the first time I went away for 8 weeks and I came back, and it was kind of like, let's just go back to life the way it was before, even though you're a completely fucking different person and all your shit's been brought to the surface.
I didn't understand that.
I know. And so that was what made it so hard for that period of our life was, I was a shit show. I was having, quarter life crisis, but then also I came home and you wanted me to go back into that same role that I was in before. So it's not like Pat's making it look easy over here.
No.
It is not easy.
Well, and in my own, I don't want to say my own defense, but that...
I'm not trying to berate you.
No,
I'm just
I know.
trying to point out the fact that we're not the golden couple.
No, we're not. And I think part of that, the first time you came back, and you might agree with this too, we didn't have, the whole can of worms wasn't opened yet.
Right.
It really wasn't. I mean, we had just scraped the surface. You came back and I was like, okay, so you went away, you learned some shit, and we're gonna try to work on it. The second time you came back is when it was really full swing. Okay, we kind of now we really know what we're up against.
Right.
Like, I think it was way more defined and easier for me, at least, to understand. Maybe it took me 2 or 3 years to understand what the hell was going on, but the first time you came back, dude, I had no idea what was going on. I just knew that you came back and you were different, and we had some shit you needed to figure out. Then the second time, it was like, holy shit, we really know what's going on, and we can start to really do the work.
And I think you realize what role you play in it.
Right.
You know, like the first time I came back, and it was like, oh, you have all this shit from your childhood.
I didn't know that I could help in any way. Like,
or that you could hinder in any way.
Right.
Like you didn't realize you had a role to play in it.
Exactly.
And I think, obviously, if you're in a relationship with someone, you have a role to play in their happiness and their unhappiness.
Yeah.
But especially if they have complex PTSD, because you will trigger them. No matter what, it will fucking happen. Like, if strangers trigger me, of course my partner's going to trigger me. Like, it's just, it's how it is.
Yep. Because you see him every day.
Right. And your mind starts warping them into things. You know, like, my mind has found ways to make you into my father. Even if you don't, you could just fucking be silent. And I would still, my mind would still find ways to associate you with that.
I remember, I'll try not to go into too much detail, but one instance in particular sticks out in my mind. Every time you say that, I've found ways of turning you into my father. There's one instance in particular that totally comes to mind. And you remember, so you've told me about all the times where your dad has, like, stalked you, right? And found out where you were and tracked you down and all this stuff. I did that once. And so every time you say that, I go back to that one spot and I go, holy shit, she did. It wasn't like, that's not something I do. I don't do that to you on a regular, you know what I mean? But it was almost like I don't want to completely put blame on you, but it was almost like,
you can put blame on me. It's manipulation.
Was it? I mean, it was, because you weren't 100% yourself.
It was unconscious manipulation.
Yeah.
Like, I was so good. Because what happens is your mind wants
you had made all those events
the abuse
happen.
cycle, right?
Yeah.
So your mind, because that's what's safe. So when I got out of the mental hospital the first time, and I felt completely unsafe, and I felt, I was just like in a constant state of
shit was
trigger.
staring at you in the face.
I had to find a way to be safe, which meant all of the abuse that I was used to feeling, I had to feel that again. Like, I had to bring it into being somehow.
Yeah.
And that's what I kept doing. I kept trying to find ways to, to inflict pain on myself, basically.
Even unconsciously. It was, I mean, when I look back on it now, of course it was hurtful and painful, but it's kind of amazing when you think about it.
Well, I know. And that's how I step back and look objectively at the mind of somebody with complex PTSD, because it is amazing. It is amazing the power that our mind has. And if that power is corrupted and it's wired the wrong way in childhood, then you get things like Hitler. You get things like, I'm going to compare myself to Hitler for a second. Hitler went a completely different way than what I went, but I still manipulated people, and I still manipulated myself, and I still hurt people, and I still hurt myself.
Yeah.
Hitler took his pain out on everyone else, and I inflicted my pain on myself.
Right.
But those are the things that can happen. It can be such an impactful, powerful mutation of the mind.
Right.
That's what complex PTSD is. This, I like to use the word evolution because it it's more positive for me, but it's not just an evolution of your mind changing. It is a mutation, a mutilation of your mind as a child into this whole new thing, into this complex PTSD mind. And yes, we can study it, we can learn about it, and it all kind of happens the same way. But it's beautiful, but it's terrifying.
Yeah. So,
like Donald Trump.
To kind of come back to the
that guy's got some trauma.
Oh, Jesus. Here we go. So, we're not trying to be a political podcast at all. All right? Just so you know.
It's all relevant.
It's all relevant. So,
relative? It's all relative. That's what I was trying to say.
All right. So, yeah, when you're trying to be in a relationship with someone that has PTSD, you have to really understand. You're never going to understand. I just put it to you that way. And this is what I tell people. You're never going to understand, but you'd better try. If you want that relationship, if you love the person, and you're gonna put your feet in the fire and you're gonna make it happen, then you need to try your hardest every day to understand. You're not going to. Gunta? You're not going to.
You're not gonna do it.
Not gonna do it.
All right.
But you need to try every single day, and you're gonna fail a lot.
I want to run through something with you. This is something that I've read personally and use, but I think it's a really good list of things for people who have complex PTSD. But I think, how can you bring your friends, your partners, your relationships into this as well? And this is 13 steps for managing emotional flashbacks. We're going to go through this real quickly, but I think I just want you to hear it so that you can give that that feedback of how can a partner, how can a friend, how can a parent.
Do you want me to respond after every single one of them, or how do you want to do this? I've never heard these before.
Right, that's why. Well, I want everyone to hear them. But no, after I finish, I just want to hear your feedback of how you hearing it. What does it evoke within you? What do you think? How does it change you? How does
in
it
the
affect
context
you?
of a relationship?
In our relationship.
Oh, specifically ours. Because that's really all I know is our relationship.
Okay, so this is on page 146 of your hymnal. Steps of managing emotional flashbacks. Step 1, tell yourself, I'm having an emotional flashback. And this is very important. I didn't have this word emotional flashback until I read this book, which was admittedly 6 months ago. I just thought I was being triggered. But tell yourself that you are reliving an emotional feeling from the past. It is not real. It is not the present. The present? So step 1, you're having a flashback, which is probably not something you're going to be able to do. But that's when I say things like, I'm just being triggered right now. I'm having a flashback.
That's actually what I was going to say, was that if you have the wherewithal to recognize that you're having an emotional flashback,
I think that's important to tell your partner.
It is incredibly important to tell your partner, because your partner, me,
or your friend or your parent,
or your friend or your parent, whoever, they can't read your mind, so they're not going to know. We cannot tell the difference between an emotional flashback, being triggered, and just being angry.
Or whatever the fuck mood you're in.
My very first response...
Tell yourself, and maybe tell somebody close to you.
Will be to put the blame on myself. Oh shit, I did something wrong. Until you tell me otherwise. So it's important that you tell your partner. Yeah.
Step 2, remind yourself, I'm feeling afraid, but I'm not in danger. And I think for me that's been really helpful, because when I have emotional flashbacks, there are varying degrees, but sometimes I am physically, well, not physically, but I feel physically like I'm back in the house with Phil. And to remind myself that I am safe, and to have a partner remind me that I am safe, I think that would would only make it better. Because I've gotten to the point where I can say, oh, you're safe, you're safe, you're safe.
Right.
And I can know this logically.
Right.
But if I had someone telling me, you're not there, it's not happening right now.
And actually, I don't know if I don't know if I've been blatant enough with it, but recently, I'd say over the past month or two, I've really tried to recognize those moments and ask you if you're okay.
Yeah. Super fun date night idea.
Really want, that's what I want that's a goal for myself that I have right now, is to be able to recognize and say, and give you that.
Right.
And it's hard because it would be weird if you said, I need you to tell me I'm safe right now. which I think you've said before.
Right. Well, it would be nice if you could just
if I could just sense it, yeah, that would be great. But it's
well, and
it's
if you
hard.
think about it,
because like I said, I don't know if you're in a flashback.
The role of a partner is to make you feel safe.
Right.
Like, that was your job 100,000 years ago. Anyway.
So, yeah, that's something I'm actually trying to do right now. And if you're good enough as a partner or a friend.
It's not a good or bad thing.
Well, if you're able to recognize these things in your partner, then yeah, by all means, you need to
It's not about being good. It's about being present.
Right.
And having the communication. So I would suggest that you sit down with your partner or friend or somebody close to you and run through these things and be like, how can we implement this in our life? For me personally and for us together. So say I'm having a flashback. I feel afraid, but I'm not in danger. Number 3, own your right. Need to have boundaries. Remember remind yourself that you do not have to allow anyone to mistreat you. You are free to leave dangerous situations and protest unfair behavior. And that is so important to set those boundaries and then stick to them. Don't roll over. Speak reassuringly to your inner child. I often do this when I'm in the middle of a trigger or a flashback or whatever the fuck you want to call it.
I can't do that for you. Right.
You can't do that, but you can, you cannot do the things that freak out my inner child. I don't know. But you need to go back to the you that you were when this original fear or pain happened. So when I'm in an emotional flashback, what triggers me a lot is I need to get away. Something happens and I feel like I'm in danger and I need to run.
Okay.
And I recognize this, and then I start thinking about, before I ran away from my dad's or when I was alone as a child. And I have a conversation with that part of myself. And I say, you're safe. You're not living in that anymore. This is where we are now.
Right.
And then I start comparing, this is my life now. I can literally lose touch with all the wonderful things that are happening in my life because I'm completely back there.
So do you think that in my role in this, do you think that just bringing you back and saying you're safe can be a kickoff, a catalyst for that one? Yeah. Because I can't talk to your inner child for you.
Or just even
but I can bring you back and say, hey, you're safe. You're here.
Helping your partner be grounded and helping your partner, let's do a quick minute meditation. Or how about you relax and I'll read you, a grounding exercise or something, you know? If you stopped mid-argument with your partner and said, hey, let's both of us do a grounding exercise for 5 minutes and then come back to the argument afterwards, it would probably change your life and your relationship.
Oh, here's a little lovely side note that you need to understand as a partner. Don't ever discount what your partner's doing as far as recovery. If you think it's silly, like the crystal thing, they're holding crystals, they're doing weird witchy things sometimes, whatever it is, don't discount it because it's working. It's doing what it's supposed to do. And learn something.
You think that my witchcraft is silly?
No, but what I'm saying is I know a lot of people that could get that way, and that's not going to help.
And me getting defensive isn't going to help right now either.
Right. I'm not trying to, I'm just saying, that's something that I know a lot of people would not be able to buy into or you know what I mean? You have to.
Whatever your partner's doing to heal, let them heal, as long as it's safe.
Yeah, as long as it's safe. And it never hurt to learn something about it. I could just imagine a couple getting into an argument and her saying, let's stop, let's do a grounding exercise. And the guy's like, what the fuck? No,
Well, if you want to make the relationship work, you have to be willing to try anything.
Exactly. My point. Thank you.
The next part, number 5, deconstruct eternity thinking. In childhood, fear and abandonment felt endless. And it feels endless now because I can still immediately be right back there. So I think that plays back into
bring it back to the moment.
Helping your friend or partner come back into the present moment. If you're with a friend and they're having a flashback and a panic attack, help bring them back to the present moment. Help them realize that was the past. This is now.
Yep.
And it may seem like, for me, I get into a state of depression that's like, oh, I'm always going to be thrust back into these flashbacks.
Mm-hmm.
But as I've gone through my healing journey over the years, I would have flashbacks every day or every week.
Mm-hmm.
Now I can go months and months without having those horrible flashbacks that make you lose touch with reality. And that's, done by reminding yourself that the flashback will pass just as it's always passed before. And with healing, the time between those flashbacks will grow. Reminding yourself that you're an adult and in an adult body, that you have friends and allies, and that you have resources to protect yourself that you didn't have when you were a child.
Oh, yeah.
And I think a partner can
that's powerful.
Take a role in that,
Sure.
reminding them that, I wasn't there for you when you were a kid, or maybe I was there, maybe we knew each other, but I didn't step up and help in any way, but I'm here now and I'm going to help you.
Yeah.
And you're here now, you're an adult now, and you can step up and can take control of your life. You probably shouldn't tell your partner to take control of their life, but you can
you
say,
do it in the right way.
Yeah, you can say that I'm here to help you now. Ease back into your body. Gently relax and ask your body to relax. Breathe deeply and slowly, slow down, and find a safe place. Feel the fear in your body without reacting to it. And I think that awareness of like feeling your panic attack, like obviously you're going to feel a panic attack,
Mm-hmm.
but like maybe if your partner's like, well, what does it feel like in your chest? Or what does it feel like in your arms?
Oh,
and
yeah.
you do some sort of like body scan check-in.
Yeah.
To disassociate from being held by the fear to just watching the fear.
Right. It's similar to what I've been talking to our son about.
Yeah.
Notice
Stepping back and noticing the emotion without being engulfed in it.
Right. Or overrun by it.
Which, in the moment it's going to sound difficult, but the more you try to do it, the easier it gets.
Right.
Resist the inner critic, drasticizing and catastrophizing. I've never heard anybody use that word. We're just going to use catastrophizing because that's what I do.
Catastrophizing's bad. Don't do that shit.
It's not helpful.
Sorry.
So use the thought stopping to halt the thoughts. Use thought substitution or thought correction, and allow yourself to grieve.
I can help with allowing you to grieve. I can't. Maybe reframing your thoughts. It comes down to communication. If you want the partner to help, you really need to be able to communicate what's going on so that I can help, so that I can't read your mind. So you've got to feed me everything that you want, and then or you're feeling or thinking. That way I can kind of go, okay, this is where she's at. Maybe this is what I should say this, or maybe I can help you reframe. But again, the partner's job really is to be able to hear what you're saying or see what you're doing, react. And it's hard when there's no words involved.
Well, and I think this is a really good template for sitting down with your partner or your friend or your parent, child, whatever, and outlining like, what can we do to help?
Yeah.
What do I need to know about you?
Right.
And this is becoming really long, so I think we should just do a whole episode on these strategies. Managing emotional flash, because
or we'll come back to them next episode. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, there's just a lot here, and it is so important. But things to remember.
It is. I think
be patient with your recovery, and know that as long as you're taking steps forward, then you're doing a good thing. And on some days you can't take a step forward. Some days you just have to be.
And that's okay.
That's okay.
That's
sometimes it's hard
to remember. You need somebody to remember. Help you remember that it's okay.
Yeah, you can't constantly be attacking these things in your mind and confronting them and healing. Like, you have to just be sometimes too, and that's okay.
I remember when I was a kid, that was something my mom taught me, was just being.
Yeah.
It's okay to just be.
Definitely not taught to children with complex PTSD.
Blew my mind when she said that. I was like, what? Just be? What are you talking about? And then I was like, I tried to practice just being.
All right, so next episode's going to be about love, and
we'll probably do more than one episode about love.
It's going to turn into like a long thing, and I think we might have our first guest coming if we can figure out how to make it work with over the phone.
Yeah, we can practice.
We want to have people on the show, like fucking talk to us, and
I'm working on a crossover with another podcast that I know. details to follow.
So yeah, future.
There's a lot going on. We got some things in the works.
We need to stop talking because this is getting really long.
What are we at? 120?
Yeah, it's like our longest episode ever.
Oh shit. Okay. Yeah, and I gotta go get the kids.
So yeah, thank you for listening to me talk for an hour and 24 minutes.
It was amazing. It was a good episode, I think.
I hope so. I hope it helps. And I mean, literally my job's done because one person was like, this helped me. And I'm like, yeah, it did. So that's a win.
There it is.
I'm done.
We're done.
Fuck Phil.
Fuck Phil.